What is up, guys? It is Stu. It is another episode of the What the Fuck Gym Talk podcast. I've got Lindsey Jenks on the podcast. This is attempt number 11 of ours to try to make a podcast happen. We both had random bullshit popping up every time we've tried to do this. Lindsey is the founder of Macrostax. And coincidentally, we were just by 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Your husband, when he was with Fitbot, one of the first companies he founded and really kind of took off and did really well. It was one of the first paid content gigs I ever had, like way back in the day. And so when I got to meet him at a speaking event that I was at, and anyway, it's funny kind of come around full circle now. And then even now, like the two worlds where, I'm very involved and very close to the Metabolic crew. And then you're obviously integration with them as well. So Liz, if you don't mind me asking, if you give everyone kind of that 2-minute kind of like whirlwind summary of how you went from wherever the hell you were to where you are now in owning Macrostax and growing this thing.
Yeah, sure. That's so funny. Fitbot. I haven't heard that in a long time because they eventually rebranded to True Coach.
True
but
Coach,
Fitbot that was the beginning. That was fun. Cool. Yeah. So I I got my bachelor's in exercise and sports science. I've always felt called to health and fitness and opened up a couple CrossFit gyms with my husband. And in that journey, I love being an entrepreneur and startups and building business and having ideas and growing things from nothing. And we were kind of like not tired of the gym, the box scene, but it was, 5 years in and we were like kind of anxious to do something else. And, simultaneously, I've always been trying to find a solution to like stay really lean, strong, healthy, look a certain way, all the pressures of the world. And, basically before counting macros, it was just toxic. Like starving yourself, diet pills, all the things, just totally restrictions. And found counting macros changed my life and was like, let's share this with the world. And so started nutrition coaching, and that kind of exploded in a year. And then I'm like, let's bring this to an app form. And that was about 8 years ago. And here we are.
Okay. I want to dial it back a little bit back to the gym ownership thing, because this is a lot of people who ended up doing something else, whether it's what I do now, what you do now. There's a lot of stories of this. They started off in a brick and mortar service-based business, gym typically type scenario. And we all kind of, when we talk about that transition, we use like these words, like you said, anxious, which I love. Can you give me a really transparent, vulnerable description of like being a brick and mortar owner? Because I share this constantly. Like my biggest stressor, the thing that freaked me out the most, was the pressure of having full-time staff and knowing that I was everything to them, their kids, their mortgage, their whatever. That freaked me the fuck out the most. It was one of the things that I read a book called Company of One that really empowered me to make my transition out of gym ownership and quote unquote retire from that whole scene. But I'm always interested in knowing for people, like, what was the straw that broke the camel's back, or what was the big turning point? I mean, is it having a SaaS product we can just make a lot more money? Is it, well, our lease was up and this kind of be the opportunity just to bow out gracefully? Or it's like, I honestly just got fucking sick of babysitting adults.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, there's probably a little bit of a mix in there, but I would say that, me personally and my husband, we just get really hungry for more. And CrossFit was starting to plateau at the time. So it was like when we were selling around like 2016, like we were probably like, one of the first to sell and actually make a profit. But, I don't know if those days still exist, but, so we were kind of seeing it like, okay, it was peaking. We had 300 members and then it kind of like plateaued, started to like taper a little bit. We're like, ooh, I don't know if this is a long-term business for us. We need to make sure we're like, we can make money and like, live long-term and all that. And then also just, I think if I could go back, I would change my viewpoint. But at the time I was getting really tired of, just the day in and day out of people all day. And now I kind of miss it. But back then I just thought like, oh my gosh, like people just want more. And it's like, nobody's ever happy and that sort of thing. And that was really exhausting. And then, you know, the coach part, I loved my staff. We had like the dream team. It was amazing. Some of the best years of my life. But yeah, that pressure of like, you are their everything. And if they're not making enough money, it's like, you kind of like feel like it's your fault. And so, yeah, that part of it was definitely, you know, there was some challenging aspects there, but really I think it came down to just us being hungry for more. And I'm like, you know, I wanted to like scale to the moon and reach millions, and where brick and mortar is like hundreds and, you know, maybe 1,000 or so. And so, you know, how do you do that? You go online.
Were you able to start? I'm assuming you started just doing some online nutritional coaching while you had the gym, and then were you able to kind of
Yeah.
see that little side hustle? I mean, I started this in end of 2014, 2015. And, you know, at a certain point, it's like, okay, well, I could potentially walk away from this thing when the revenue of my side hustle becomes less side hustle-ish. Talk to me about, because I get a lot of people that ask me like, hey, the gym's doing good. It's not great. You know, I'm not going to retire off this thing, but it's stable and it's okay. I don't think I want to scale it and grow it anymore, but I could do this other adjacent fitness thing. And it's generally some version of online consulting, coaching, whatever. Can you talk to me about how like that part, you know, do you feel it's the best way to do it if an owner's listening to this and maybe they have similar thoughts that you had? And it's like, well, I think I could do this. Isn't it better to maybe start that while they still have the income and the revenue of the gym so they can kind of test the waters?
Yeah, oh man, I have mixed feelings on this because I'm kind of like an all or nothing person. Like I'm like all in, just like let's go, let's do it. So naturally, though, I did start consulting while I had a gym because the first buyer, like, basically, like, bullshitted us around for like an entire year and then like backed out. And that was like lesson number one. Learned a lot from that. And so during that year, I thought I was selling. And so I started this other this other like consulting company called Lean Machine Nutrition. That's so funny. And yeah, so I started doing the consulting thing. And so naturally, I think I got the benefit of like starting to try and go all in while I still have an income. And then luckily we did find another buyer, and I got to sell. So I think, to your point, it probably is wise to make sure that you can actually get customers, you know, online if that's your goal. And instead of just kind of like getting rid of, you know, your gym first, right? Especially because consulting doesn't really, you're not, it's a hard business too. And so, I think definitely testing the waters, that's a no brainer. If you can do both, why not? Plus, like most of my customers, my first customers, early adopters were all members, you know, or friends of members.
That's what I was going to ask you is, you know, being in brick and mortar. So like when I went into the consulting scene, I couldn't double dip my members, obviously with a different audience type scenario, but I was curious with yours, were you able to really test pilot and kind of create an MVP if you can for his, you know, because this was still like your thing was a consulting. It was a job. Like I tell like, this is what I do is not a business. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, there's no consulting. There is no WTF Gym Talk. The consulting
Yeah.
with the online nutrition beginning as a side hustle where you were able to double dip the members and kind of test that pool? And then when were you able to
Yep.
break into, okay, I got to become an online thing because I could be doing this with people in Columbus, Ohio?
Yeah. Uh, Definitely. I mean, I just kind of threw it out there to the email list that we had created, and that was test number one. And like I had, you know, like a handful of signups, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like people actually want to do this. And then, you know, people started getting results, and these were all people that most people that I knew really, really well. I did, however, launch it. I guess you could consider it like, you know, worldwide or US, because I put it online and like threw an ad up there. And my first customer wasn't, you know, part of the gym, but I would say the majority of them were. And, you know, I think that builds confidence too, because they already love you and like they're already bought in. And, you know, why not kind of do it that way? And,
Sure.
you know, like, and then they start to see results, and then their friends and mom and all that. Like, I definitely saw the trickle effect happen. And so I think for somebody, especially if they're apprehensive to try it, then start with the people you know, because they're just like, they're your fan, right? And they want to do good because they love you, and it's not some like random person online who doesn't know anything about you, because that's also like prior to, you know, Instagram really being big and all that. So you really only had the people in front of you.
Sure. when you decided to go and you're like, okay, I threw up the ad type scenario. I mean, obviously, Casey has got a lot of experience in the SaaS world at that point. Was that always the idea was, okay, this is going to be, like, eventually it'll become a standalone app?
When I first started consulting, no. Yeah, I was just like, I want to build a business doing nutrition and share this with the world because it's so powerful. And I got over 100 clients within the first year. And I actually hired 2 nutrition coaches, a dietitian and a nutrition coach under me. And we exploded. I don't know. We had like 200 or 300 clients. I was making like 100 grand year one. And I was like, oh, wow, like this is like real. And so then I'm thinking like, okay, but I'm working 7 days a week. I mean, it was email, so it was different, but it was still like all day, every day, because I'm trying to build this business. And that didn't feel great either because it did get a little bit boring because it was mundane. It was the same thing all the time, over and over and over again. And so that's when I was like, I want to scale this. Like, I really want to reach more people. And I had an aha moment probably after about a year that I was like, I just need to bottle up what we're doing and still do it, but just like make it more efficient. And so like, let's go online, let's make it an app. And we still to this day have nutrition coaches as part of Macrostax. So like that coaching aspect is still like the core of what we do. We just want to make it like, automated and easier for people. So yeah, it took about a year. And once I saw like, oh wow, like this is a real business. If I can get, if I can make 100 grand, first year with just regular people and not an online thing, then definitely can probably scale this.
And so, okay, so talk to me about at that point, what does that look like? So we do a lot of concept validation calls, right? We listen to an idea, poke holes in it, talk about the opportunities, vulnerabilities in it. Most of the time, these are brick and mortar things I'm being presented with. A lot of times, though, there are some kind of online thing. What would you say to someone who's like, okay, I want to do something similar to what you did, Lindsey? I want to take it from one-on-one consulting into hire some people, develop a decent sized team, but then the app part. I think a lot of people underestimate how expensive and long and how much unique skill sets you need to have in order hiring developers, working with them. And I think people really underestimate what it costs to bring an actual standalone native iOS, Android type like app to real life with decent UX. Like, could you just walk people through, like, I think those 7 realms of hell that people don't realize that you guys go through when developing these things?
Yeah. And you nailed it. It's definitely, it was definitely hell. Excuse me, I'm getting over a sickness. So, excuse me. I think I get this question a lot too, because people are like, hey, I have this great idea. I want to bring it to an app, and they're really not in tune with what that means, which I wasn't either. So no, like, I didn't know anything when I first started. So I basically had, I had $5,000 in my pocket and I was like, okay, how could I turn this into something? And I can't believe it worked. I really can't, because nowadays, to give people who are listening who may want to do this, that I don't think that exists anymore. You probably need at least like 50 grand to get started. And that's just to get like an MVP out the door, just something that people can play with. It's probably not going to be good, but it might get the point across and you might get some early adopters and understand if like people actually want the product. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong too when it comes to launching software, is they want it to be perfect before they launch it. And I see a lot of founders fail that way because it's really expensive and you just keep building. You're like, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. And quite frankly, it's probably never going to be like what you want it to be. Still to this day, 8 years later, I'm like, frustrated, right, with the app. And like, it's just, I still don't have X, Y, and Z in it. And I'm like thinking, how is that even possible 8 years later? But it is. And so I would say first piece of advice is definitely get it out there as soon as you possibly can. If it works, throw it in front of people. And if you want to do it free, that's fine too. I'm a big proponent of charging for everything because That's just kind of, I think that's how you make money. I think that's how you, it's perceived value. And if you're like, hey, listen, if it's actually something that provides value, even if it's kind of janky, hey, I'm like, listen, this might not be the best software, but if you do it, you're going to lose weight. So, it costs $20 or whatever. And so, do you have a question?
Oh, you tell them my
Oh,
Facebook
sorry.
question. No, I did. I have a bunch of them as I was thinking about this. So for everyone not familiar, just an MVP is just a minimum viable product. It's generally the first, like the beta version of the app that you get in the hands of like maybe an initial round of testers or people, beta testers, things like that. So you can, there's this really good saying in software, with enough eyes, all bugs are shallow. So you get enough eyeballs on it, you'll get a good list and feedback of all the things you got to fix on it.
Yeah.
My question when you were thinking of Macrostax, like whenever I do these concept calls, I was okay, like what problem are we solving? Who else is solving something similar? What's the differentiation here going to be? Obviously, everyone thinks of Under Armour buying MyFitnessPal, right, as being like one
Yep.
of the main two. As you were thinking of in-person, well, Zoom or Skype-based remote consulting and then email support, what was your vision for, I need to make this different or better than the largest brand name competitor that everyone's pretty much familiar with being MyFitnessPal?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a key too. I think a successful business too is what is your differentiator, and very, very, very early on, because we all use MyFitnessPal. I used it. Everybody used it. And what was the only thing out there? And they got bought for like 475 million. So that was really motivating for me, because I was thinking, oh my gosh, if this company got bought for that, then if I make mine better, what's the outcome going to be? So the key was that almost all of my clients, all macro counters out there, 90% of them are like, great, thanks for these numbers. Now what? I don't know how to hit my macros. I don't know what to eat. I don't know what's in food. And they either stop and they don't even start, or, they get frustrated and they can't figure it out because, the knowledge isn't there. We didn't learn it growing up. And so my Macrostax key differentiator, and what I always wanted to come true, was like, I want to actually help people hit their macros. So like the software, I wanted the algorithm to be able to do that. Suggest foods that like fill in your 30 grams left for the day, or I don't like the word meal plan, but essentially giving people a food plan that's interchangeable. So if they don't like fish, then they can put something else in there. Just auto suggesting recipes that hit their macros, doing the calculations for them, because they're like, I don't know what the hell like 434 grams is. And so saying like, okay, great, eat 2 cups, like you can figure that out, or 2 chicken breasts or whatever the deal is. And so I think that was like my vision, was like, we need to help people hit their macros. MyFitnessPal doesn't do that, and they still don't today. However, a lot of competitors came up and, figured that out too. But I would say that's probably like Macrostax's secret sauce, and just like where I saw the hole in the gap in the industry.
When people ask you, how is it? Is it AI? Is it magic? Is it a magical combination? It's essentially, and it's an Excel sheet buried beneath this beautiful UX. Like, how does the Macrostax, how does it know what to give me compared to everybody else?
Yeah. So so when you're signing up and you enter in all your personal information, you're entering in your age, height, weight, activity level, goals, plus you're entering in, am I gluten free? Am I a vegetarian? We're agnostic. So whatever you want to do, we'll support you. And, and I don't eat red meat, and I'm allergic to mushrooms, that type of thing. So we take all that into account. And then we split up your day based on if you're working out, if you rest, maybe you don't work out, that's okay too. But most of our clients do work out. And so we'll kind of like divvy up your macros throughout the day. And then that sends it to the algorithm in the back end. And we basically pull from our database, which we use Nutritionix, which has, over 1 million foods and restaurants. And then we have our own recipe database that was, curated by dietitians. And it has macro profiles. Like when the recipes were being created, it had like our Macrostax macro profile in mind. And so it will go in and search with however many macros the person has and find a match. And so that's kind of like how it started. That's how it began. And then it shows you. And now today we show you many options. It used to be just one. We also have like, the difference between recipes and foods. And I think in the future, which would be really exciting, is having like a smart suggestion and just taking it one step further. So once somebody does add a recipe or a food that we suggested, like the algorithm kind of just prompting them more the next day. So that's kind of like the future, and something that we hope to accomplish next year. But just make it smarter and smarter now that we have AI, bring that into it. We kind of like created our own, I guess you could consider it AI, but it's obviously novice compared to what's out there now. But, just taking in the numbers, it's very, very complex behind the scenes. It would be nearly impossible for somebody to replicate what we're doing. But yeah, that's how it works.
What is, did you guys at some point, because you went from the lean machine nutrition, right? And
Yep.
you decided it looks like you guys obviously invested in some really nice rebranding, with Macrostax. I'd love to get the origin story on the name and all that in a second. But did you ever have to take on considerable debt? Were you able to find VCs? So again, when people are listening to this, I want to try to piece together this. Like I had $5,000 in my pocket, and then like everyone can scroll on Lindsey's Instagram, and if you go back far enough, you're going to see the lean machine that looks like, no offense, it looks like it's made a Canva logo, like today's world, but it was great.
Yeah.
I mean, like, but you hustled. I saw photos of you at, CrossFit events with Castro, and you set up your booths and you did the whole thing. Did you just save and then reinvest all that to then elevate the brand to something different, similar to what Casey did with Fitbot going to True Coat?
Yeah. I definitely hustled. So I would say nothing came easy. I mean, I have always been the type of person that's just out there. I'm asking, I'm like just going for it, gung ho, super confident, like this works, you need to do it, and show up everywhere and tell everybody about it kind of thing. So don't shy away because you're nervous that, your product isn't the best or anything like that, because it can get there and it's not going to be, the best day one. I would say I got in at the right time. So, I bootstrapped the company to this point. And so I never took outside capital, VCs, friends and family, nothing. So that's like a really, really cool part of, my story, just because that's really rare. And so I love talking about it just because you have to like kind of look at the business from more of like a capital efficient, standpoint. And so if I started with $5,000, all I had was a basic prototype that I could like throw in front of 100 people. And then, but I charged day one because that was, my key. And then I took all that money and reinvested, and it just kept going back into development. I mean, I don't even know how many millions of dollars we're into it at this point. But just, I'm throwing the numbers out there because I want to make sure people understand, like it's not, a couple $100,000, like it's millions of dollars, years of work. It's long, it's hard. And being a non-technical founder, finding the right team, making sure that you have those technical people next to you that you can trust and rely on, which I eventually found them. I did not start off that way. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And so if you don't mind, as much as you're little as you want to share. So Macrostax currently on the B2C model, right? So working with any consumer online who wants this guided assistance with their macros and their nutritional goals. Is it 15 a month, 30 a month?
Yeah, now it's 30. And then if you sign up for the year, it's 15.
15. How many active subscriptions do you guys currently have?
We've served about 200,000 people on the consumer side.
So everyone listening to this, in the brick and mortar scene, if we can get a gym to between 3 and 5% monthly churn, month over month, we're in a really good spot. There's no such thing as a client who truly stays forever, right? Everybody cancels on a long enough timeline. What does the churn look like for something like this online? Because, it's in the SaaS world, and again, this is your expertise, not mine. There's a psychology between like a price point where it'll stay on, even if it's not actively being utilized, if it's at a certain price point, but you also have your own economics and cost you have to factor into that. So, with 200,000 people, like what do you guys see in a churn process, either monthly or quarterly, that you have to be thinking, okay, we got to replace X amount just to break even on the new membership to churn ratio?
Yeah, I would say that has been our biggest challenge. Anyone in nutrition, even way more than even fitness, because it's nutrition and, if you want to call it a diet, it's come and go, right? You're going to get super fired up and you're going to do it for a while and then you're going to fall off. We're coming up into the holidays, and 8 years in a row, November and December are our lowest months. And we've tried everything, right, to move the needle there. And it's just behavior. And so I think there's two things that you have to be really aware of. One is insurance, so replacing that. And that's something we've been successful at. I think, I do have a digital advertising background, and so that helped, and still does to this day. And so that's primarily how we got new customers until it was word of mouth. And so we're just constantly filling that empty buckets. You have to just keep hustling, keep be out there, just keep going for new customers. And then finding something that's part of your product that people can use, even if they are in a lull season. So they're excited, like for instance, for Macrostax, they love our holiday recipes. So they might stay on just so they can get the new holiday recipes and use them. And they know that they're not counting macros, but they know that it's quote macro friendly. And so if they're eating that, they feel good about themselves. And so, finding a part of your product that is, people call it sticky, right? So what is that's going to keep people on even when they're not super jazzed up about tracking their food?
Yeah. I mean, nutrition has the lowest compliance of anything as humans in general, right? It's the one
been
thing.
Hard.
It's kind of insane. You watch people this motherfucker spending $250 a month to go cold plunge at a local cold plunge spot, but I can't get him to spend $30 to log his goddamn fucking, his eggs and muffins.
I know.
Wait, do you? And I love the digital marketing background. What does that look like for you? Is there a goal you guys have of a client acquisition cost to that lifetime client value that you guys seek? Hey, the marketing isn't working because the cost to acquire this client is, whatever, $300, but our current lifetime client value of this client is only $200. That obviously would never work. So how do you think about that with Macrostax?
Yeah, we've always been successful with the CAC to LTV ratio being, greater than 1, which means we're making money. But there's definitely been some times where, it's less than 2 and we're thinking a really, really healthy business is between 3 and 5, I would say. And so that was always our goal to get to 5, right? Because that's acquisition ready. We're crushing it. We're going to make millions. And, that's definitely been challenging in the nutrition field, but we have been getting better about it. I would say when it got really hard, and this might speak to some people out there, when the iOS changed and there's the privacy issue and everybody gets on their phone and it says, do you want us to track you? And they're like, no, why would I want you to track me? Right. But what they didn't realize is that's going to kill all these small businesses, because how we were attracting new customers. And we were getting people when I first started for $20, $30, $40, that was our CAC. It was so low, super cheap. And then when the iOS hit, everybody said, no, I don't want you to track me. And what that does is we can't actually find customers as easily that have the profile of what we're looking for. And so that made it really hard. And I would say it doubled the CAC overnight pretty much. And so we definitely had some shifting to do. We could still afford it, but obviously the business looks more if you're spending double to acquire a customer. And that's when you have to find other ways to essentially make money. And maybe there's other avenues in the business where you can start to acquire people from a different avenue, which is what we did, going after gyms instead of just the consumers. And so that was kind of a pivotal moment for us. And so I think, making sure that you are on top of what's happening and not, out there and not giving up when it gets hard, right? Or when it gets expensive. Obviously you have to be mindful of money, but making sure you have at least 3 months of runway in the bank at any given time, to kind of get you through those down periods. And a lot of people didn't make it out of that who were in the SaaS world, small businesses. It's still hurting us to this day, but Macrostax was able to work through that, but the CAC got high.
Yeah, I understood. And I think, everyone does the really simple math. Everyone's sitting here is going to do okay, between 15 and $30, let's go 20 times 200,000 active members. So they're doing 4 million a year, ballpark, whatever the number is. But it's even though it's but it's online, it's not they don't even have to lease a space. And it's and my question to that is, number one, is that even true? Because at a certain scale, a lot of people do choose, and a lot of people have chosen to stay remote, What have you guys decided to stick with as far as your team, and how big is that team?
Yeah, we actually did stay remote after COVID, and I think part of that is just because I'm, the as the founder and CEO, I really enjoy the balance. Like I take my dogs for walks during the day and work out, and like my day just like it extends, it goes longer because I work from home. But yeah, that was something we stuck with. We before COVID, we actually did the 2 days in a week, so we were doing the hybrid. So I think we were ahead of the game there. And that was really awesome just because you kind of can get meet in person. But we were also having a hard time finding talent just in Boulder, Colorado and Boulder, Denver. That's where we're located. And I mean, it's hard to give up really good talent that's elsewhere. And especially when the world's kind of like moving online. So we feel good about that call, and it hasn't been too challenging. I think there's ways to make it better. Like, I think it would be great if we did more on-site. That's something I think I could do a better job of is doing more on-site for the team, but we made it work so far.
At what point was the conversation, okay, we've made X amount of money. If we want to be taken real seriously though, we need to, we just got to sophisticate up and do a rebrand. Like, I'm sure there was always like the thing you knew we were going to do eventually, but it's like, we're going to wait till we have the money because a marketing, a branding firm is not cheap. When was that in the business? What was was it just when we have that, like, why did you decide to do it? And then what's who came up with the naming of Macrostax?
Yeah, that was really early on. I can't remember exactly, but it was after I had this proof of concept. I had money coming in, regularly. That was back when I was, just making $5,000, pouring it back in the company and so on. And pretty early on, maybe year one, we were like, this is a real company. I think we got to like 1 million ARR in the first year. And I was like, this is a real company, and especially bootstrap. And so that's when we were like, we need to brand this. So it's, it's actually what it says. Lean Machine Nutrition was, it's just funny because, that's how you just know. So like, go out there, like whatever, get your 99. I think it was like, I forget what it was called.
99 designs
or something. Yeah, that's where it came from.
Yep.
And it was like $100 or something like that. And, that served us for maybe a year. Don't quote me on that, but somewhere, around there. And it worked because the product worked and the marketing was working and the passion was there and the financial responsibility too of just making sure that I'm not overspending on staff. So I did work really hard in those first couple of years. I was like doing support all day and night, on the toilet kind of thing, like just like everywhere. And, and then at some point I was like, okay, this is still working. So I'm going to start hiring people to help.
And who came up with the like Macrostax? Who came up with that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I did, but I'm trying to think. So what I used to do, this is back when Facebook was cool. And I came up with, his name was Kevin Taylor, who actually made the logo. And he was a CrossFit Kings Point, our gym, member at some point, and then he's like awesome, and he moved to Texas and he's just like crushes it with branding. And so I reached out to him. He created us a logo. I don't remember what it cost, but at the time it felt so expensive. I was like, oh my gosh, are you sure like this is gonna work? And it was really hard because I'm thinking like, I'm used to, I spent $100 on this and you want me to like spend how much? However, he came up with some great ideas, and then I think I came up with the name. But anyways, I put it on Facebook and did like polls. Nobody chose Macrostax, which is like so funny to think about now because like I go back and look at the names and I was like, oh wow, I'm glad I didn't like go with the Facebook poll. But yeah, that's how it came up. But the branding was a big deal.
Yeah, random focus groups are not always the best source of information for. It's like when the gym owners we work with, they'll be like, oh yeah, so we're thinking of switching up the programming and the class schedule. So we had a town hall. I'm like, bad fucking idea. I wouldn't ask those people. Nope.
Yeah.
So, all right, now let's get into one of the additional verticals. Once you've kind of felt, okay, we feel strong and confident and consistent with our B to C. Now we're going to enter into B2B. Ideally, the best scenario there, you obviously have a reputation and a background and a network within CrossFit, and that's a great market to go ahead and hit. And then you also, what I think is the smarter play is obviously the emerging growing franchises. It is, especially from a business standpoint, that is a much simpler one to kind of roll it out there and just watch it grow without without having to go and hunt individual mom and pop gyms that have a 50-50 chance at best of making it for another 3 to 5 years. So talk to me about the B2C play. How did that come alive?
Yeah,
Or
the
B2B, I'm sorry.
B2B. So yeah. So it was when that basically my idea from the beginning was always to be like in gyms. I wanted to be the go-to nutrition for gyms. I just wasn't quite sure when or how. And then when the iOS change happened, it really motivated me to get started on that product. And it's a separate product for gym owners that essentially they get to manage their clients' nutrition. They can be as hands-on or hands-off as they want. And as a former gym owner, got asked every day, what should I eat? Or how do I look like you? Or how do I get abs? And I was just like exhausted. Like I really despise that question because I'm thinking I'm not getting paid enough to create a nutrition plan for you. Nor I didn't really want to either. Like I wasn't a nutritionist. I just like was passionate about macros, right? Like I'm not even a dietitian. That's why I hire people who are. And I was thinking like, I don't want to do this. And it was just exhausting, but it's a big need. Everybody asks, what do I eat when they come to the gym? And they look to you for advice. And if you can't serve that need, then you're kind of missing out on a huge opportunity of getting your members reaching their goals, which is really number one and why we're in the business. And then number two is revenue, money. And so you're missing out on this huge opportunity. And so for us, there were so many reasons to go after the gym owner. But yeah, we essentially spent about a year creating another product called Macrostax Team. And it's specifically built for gym owners and trainers. And so they can deliver custom nutrition plans at scale. So the idea is there's a lot of software out there that like helps dietitians and it's really intrinsic. And our goal was like, no, I want to go for the gym owners. Like, I don't want to deal with your nutrition, but I want to make sure I give you something that works and that I believe in. And so that's kind of where like how the B2B side of thing came to play.
And I'm the one thing I love about the product, and I say this to gym owners all the time. I'm like, so you're a gym owner, right? Like, yeah. Like, you make as much revenue as you think you should be, or do you think you've really kicked you've kicked ass at being a gym owner already? No, we're not doing that good. Then what in the fuck are you thinking about doing something that you have even less experience in doing? Do you have more experience being a nutritional coach or even an advice giver in the realm of macro? No. So what makes you think the thing that you're really good at, that you're not doing that good of a fucking job at, you're going to do a better job over here? It just, there's no logic. But when you're drowning, right, picture someone at water and like the waves are like coming up over their head, you'll grab fucking anything to stay afloat. You'll be like, oh, I'm going to open up a daycare, Brazilian jiu-jitsu sauna room. Like you'll come up with whatever the fuck. Nutrition always seems to be the first thing that gyms go to because it's like, oh, it goes hand in hand. I'm like, do you know what percentage of your gym members really, really, really want to sit down and pay you the amount of money you'd need for in-person nutritional coaching? Minimal. Right. It's very tough. I love how Macrostax Teams takes the angle of like, listen, we are making this lift for you as easy as possible because we know you don't have the time, maybe not the knowledge or the desire. You didn't open up a nutrition coaching facility. You opened up a fitness facility. Yeah. And I love that angle you took. And I think it's one of the reasons brands like Metabolic and the franchises have really taken to you guys because that's not their core competency. And the great gym brands out there, they stick to the core competency. So I would love to know a little bit about, when you started, I'm assuming you kind of had a network and kind of hit up these CrossFit gyms and people you knew, immediately. How did it trickle up to like, pinging and hitting up the franchises and going that route?
Yeah. I kind of like what you said too about just like sticking to the core business because that's something that's really important with Macrostax. I love fitness. I actually love it more than nutrition, but I decided to open up a nutrition business. But when you're in fitness, like we aren't going to add fitness to Macrostax. It's just not going to happen because you're spread way too thin. Even though I love it and I want to do it, you can't do two things really well, in my opinion. And I shouldn't speak for everybody, but it's hard to do. And so I think sticking to what you're good at, sticking to what your core business, that's so important. And for us, it's been so tempting because we've had fitness companies, great online companies say like, hey, like, let's partner. And just like, oh man, I don't think we're going to do it well because it's already hard enough just to like push this nutrition side of things. So that's all, another reason why we started Macrostax team, because I'm like, really shouldn't try and do both really well. Some people probably are doing it if they, have a nutrition background, but it's so hard. And so, Macrostax team, it just takes that lift off, for people. And we actually, I shouldn't say it was easy, but we had people just hounding us all the time through the B2C side. Like, hey, I want to share this with my members. Do you have an affiliate program? Do you have a way that I can like sign up and like have members under me? And we had personal trainers asking for that, nutrition coaching. So for years we were building up a list. We actually like created like an email capture list. And I think we had, I don't know, 100 or about 1,000, which isn't a ton, but it was definitely 1,000 people day one that we could hit, with, hey, this finally launched. And so that was kind of our early adopters. And then after we had, our goal was to go to market with boutique gyms. And that was just so we could like test the product and make sure it was good and that it was actually adding value. And then from there, we're like, okay, now let's go after the bigger franchise type corporations and things like that. So we can, really scale this thing. And that's still to come. We have a couple, Metabolic was definitely our first fitness franchise signed. And then there's other companies that we have who their individual locations are using us. I won't mention the names. But yeah, there's other companies out there. We're trying to expand into, Gold's Gym and Orange Theory and, all the big names. So it just makes sense. Right. But the boutique gyms is where we started because that's where my heart was. And I know how hard it is and wanted to make it easy. And I also want to help these, gym owners make more money because it's a tough business.
Let's talk about that. Would you mind getting into just the details of like, okay, Macrostax is going to cost you X and this is what our MSRP or recommended pricing and what you would charge. And here's kind of a margin you could look at. Like, how do you guys, because again, gym owners like, yeah, I want to help my members, but fucking tell me how much money I'm going to make by doing this or what I can expect. That's ultimately what they're looking for.
Yeah. So because we actually upped our prices to help gym owners out. So we used to be $20 or $10 a month, depending on what you signed up for. And we upped it to $30 or $15 because we're saying we're trying to make sure that we're not cheaper than what they want to charge. And so we have a great business model, and it's because we're software and our cost, to go back to what you were saying, it is fairly low. We don't have a ton of overhead except for the bodies and the people who work for Macrostax because development's really expensive. So it's not like we don't have, overhead. It's just not in your traditional sense of, rent and things like that. And it can be a little bit more flux. But so we usually tell people, hey, if they sign up, most people are paying around $100 a month. If they have like a mom and pop gym, 100 to 200 members, they're paying anywhere from $99 to $199 a month to Macrostax. And then they can get up to, 50 active clients. And that's important to know because you can invite your whole member base, but only the people who are actually using it are going to get counted towards your quota. And so that's like, we're talking dollars, $3, $4, $5 max that you're paying per person. And then you can turn around and charge it for a minimum of $20 a month. You could go up to $30 a month. And that's if you're completely hands off because that's what we're charging. And you actually get more for Macrostax team because there's like nutrition challenges and this community feel. And like we're building out the business platform to make it more desirable for end users to actually be a part of a gym or a team. And so that's like the goal. So we still sell to both sides, but we're really trying to prioritize the business side. So those margins are pretty good depending on, what you're looking at. But I mean, it's like what, 80% or something like that. You can make definitely an extra couple $1,000s a month without even trying. And then you could, if you are a hands-on, because there's some gyms or trainers, they're more hands-on. And that just means that they like want to tweak your macros or they want to chat with their members or they want to go in and, kind of make notes and things like that. So if you're somebody who's checking in regularly with your clients who are paying you for nutrition, then you should be charging well over $100 a month for that. I mean, I even think that that's probably cheap these days, but it's hard to get gym owners to charge what they're worth. So that's, usually the bottom line is, around 100 or $50 per month. And at that case, you're obviously making a lot, but you're also working more for it. So our product is really trying to be designed for the hands off.
Yeah. And so, again, so everyone, recapping on that, at the highest, let's say the Macrostax teams is, let's say, $199 a month. You can get 50 people on there at $30 a pop. So that's $1,500 in revenue minus your $199. So you're clearing there at $1,300 a month when you take, because that's your only true cost is the licensing for the software, the use of the software, essentially.
Right.
Now, here's what I envision and I imagine at some point when you have enough data, you got to have like your top, the gyms have the highest utilization rates. Because when I see gyms use additional services, they're like, Stu, what should I expect as far as how many people will use my insert whatever additional service they're going to put in? My man, if you get to 20% within the first 12 months, I'd give you a high five. That's not bad at all. What are you guys seeing as far as utilization rates of a gym?
Yeah, I would say 20% is a standard adoption rate, especially for hands off. However, our best gyms who are making the most money are seeing 50 to 60% adoption, which is incredible. I mean, that's incredible. But they are, we call it light touch. So they are kind of reaching out to their members. We have the chat in the dashboard so you can chat back and forth. And then they're also running nutrition challenges, which that's something we haven't talked about, but that's also another way to boost your revenue because you can just make a lot in one sitting. You charge at least $50 or $100 or $200 or more. Some people do $500 if they're bundling things. So we have that all built into the platform. So it makes it really easy for you to make $5,000 or $10,000 just in one sitting. And so the nutrition challenges definitely throughout the year will help with retention, and it gets people excited because you need that, right? I mean, nobody wants to do it alone. And so that's why we're also building the platform from more of this like community feel. So next year is like the year of community, but just so because you're more likely to succeed with a buddy. So yeah, the nutrition challenges bring, higher to closer to that like 50% adoption, which is rare. But it does happen.
Is there a critical mass number? So for example, all the gym owners like, hey, we have 120 members on this. I'm like, should we add an additional revenue stream? It's like, I don't think we're done with our first homework assignment yet at 120 members, right? So like, but do you guys recommend when someone gets on a call, maybe or talk with you guys about Macrostax teams, is there like a realistic or practical like number of membership based on this 20% is what maybe the average are going to do that you guys recommend?
Yeah, you know what, though? We have trainers who have only 20 clients or 50 clients, and for them, making an extra $1,000 a month without really having to do anything, it makes sense. So we don't really have a number that we're saying you shouldn't do this if you don't have over so many, because it's really just up to you what's worth it. If $1,000 isn't worth it to you, then, that's something. But if it is, then, I mean, it's almost no work, right? So to me, it's a no-brainer. But yeah, so we don't limit it. Obviously, if you have more clients, the adoption, you're going to have more people signing up. And that's when we actually talk about building into your membership. I wish more gyms did this. I think that they're missing the mark, but building it into your membership. So whether you have other additional offerings, I'm not sure what that might be, right? But you have your membership, and then you have like, let's say a nutrition add-on and maybe something else, and you charge an extra $10 a month for it, but it's built in. So you either increase your membership rates, but you have a reason to, because you say, hey, I'm adding more value. We're actually adding custom nutrition and X into your plan. And so now, instead of $189, it's $199 a month. And now they're making, I mean, do the math there, right? I mean, it's a lot more, and it's less thought too. And it's just built in. What's hard is because people don't want to charge their members that have been there for years. And I do get that because we had to go through that too. So I'm like, okay, well then make it for anybody new, right? And just like build it from here on out, because there's just so much more revenue in it. And it's less like trying to get people to sign up. Also, if you do it right when somebody signs up, so if you are doing an add-on, it's like, hey, your base package is $189 for an extra $20 a month. You can have nutrition, and they do it because it's like right there in the spot. So I think like some gym owners who lack the sales background and knowledge can really like miss the mark, or that's why it's more of a 10% adoption versus 20, 30, 40, 50. But
I
Yeah.
know, I
So
agree. And I
I
think
would build it in.
any of the gyms that consider themselves, and I hate this fucking word in marketing, but premier, but if you were a more elevated luxury like experience, installing a barrier to entry at the point of sale, like, oh, you have to do this in order to have a membership. I don't want the Macrostax. Oh, that's perfectly fine. You just won't have a membership here. Well, why is that? Well, because you're only
Yeah.
with me 1 hour a day. That gives you 23 other hours a day to fuck this up. I want to make sure that we limit the amount of opportunity for you to fuck this up and to get you those results because you will be rocking my brand. You are representative of us. Like you can make, like, there's a lot of examples, country clubs and restaurant, apparel that there's a higher barrier to entry there because they only want a certain kind of person to be seen as their customer. And there's something powerful to that. Now, again, if you're in Des Moines, Iowa, and you're in the middle of fucking nowhere, do I think this is a good play for you? No. Do I think it's more of a tier 1 market scenario and a more of an elevated kind of brand? Yes. But adding that on there, like, no, that's definitely part of it. For the first 90 days, we want you to see results or whatever. And then, I don't know what the stickiness factor is on someone once they get on the app, how long they will stay on it. I don't know if you have any numbers on that you could share. But yeah, that's always been something I've always thought about. Like, if you're going to add this on, people like, I don't want to increase the barrier to entry and make it harder to sell. Like, I think when you position it properly, it actually makes it more intriguing to a consumer because now there's this level of like, well, what's so special about this place that I need to do this? And they don't want people. They're comfortable with me walking out of here and joining fucking Planet Fitness down the street.
Yeah. That's an interesting play too, because it doesn't have to be a barrier of entry. It can be, like you're saying, for the certain premier gym. But for other ones, you don't even talk about it as this add-on. It's more just like, this is what you get when you come to my gym, and this is how much it costs. And if they do say something like, oh, I'm not interested in nutrition, I mean, then you're telling them like, well, you told me you wanted to lose 30 pounds. You're not going to just do that in the gym, right? And so it's more education, and maybe you don't turn them away, right? Especially like you're saying, because a lot of gyms aren't in premier status. And so you're not turning them away, but you're just like, well, at some point, I hope that you try this. This is still the membership cost. And you're more just like packaging it. And some people will do like their top, $200 for, you get everything. And then maybe they'll do like a, $179 for basic. And so that can work. I just don't think that you'll make the most money that way, but it might feel the best for the business owner.
I think to support your concept there, I mean, everyone who's listening to this, you have ordered a meal in which you did not eat all the sides. But you cannot tell the waiter, I don't want the sides and the meal is cheaper. They built into the price of that burger and the sweet potato fries a certain margin. So you just do that. And if someone chooses not to eat the sides, aka use Macrostax teams, fine, fuck it. It's on them. You continue to run your proof of concept and, the success stories of people who have done it. And maybe eventually they eat those fries one day, but bake it into the costs. Be like, oh, well, if Macrostax teams, they need to increase this by what? $30 my membership. And if they don't use it, it's on them. But we do that every one of us who's gone to a restaurant have paid for something we didn't use.
Totally. Yeah, 100%.
How many, on the B2B side, how many gyms do we have on the platform now?
I think we're 1,500 or 2,000 maybe have come through since inception. So we took off pretty fast. I would say it's definitely a harder play just because it's a higher price point. There's less gyms than there are people. But our goal is because there's a lot of reasons, but from a business standpoint, it's a better play. B2B just generally has a higher LTV, a lower churn. It's going to be more attractive to, an acquirer one day. And the gym owner is actually the one dealing with the churn versus us because they have like the new members and, coming in and going. And so for us, it's a better business play, but it's also so we can, reach more people. So, my goal has always been millions and I'm not there yet. So, if we can get through these like really big chains, I think that we can hit that number a lot easier than if we're just trying to, get one person in or one gym in at a time.
Can you explain, because we talked about in the very beginning, the kind of the genesis elements of this is that, hey, it's not going to suck up. It's not a time suck. It's not, it's not a nutrition coaching cert you have to go to get you and your coaches certified in, and then you lose two of those coaches and now you got to run that fucking play over again. But what if for the gym owners, like, okay, but they've got this app and they're doing all this, like, how did the questions not come back to me? Is that when they should be deferred to the nutritional coaches that are available within the app?
Yeah, great question. So the way that Macrostax is set up is we kind of do with or without a gym, we have the nutrition coaching support for quote for free. It's built into your subscription. So you can chat with a coach at any time and it's no additional cost. So some people take advantage of that and love it and love it and love it. And other people just don't take advantage of it and that's okay. And so you're going to have the same within a gym. There's going to be a handful of people that really have a ton of questions and they want the nutrition support. And so we are built to scale. So we have enough coaches that we can, support however many of your members that there are. And so you'll just, defer to Stacks chat, but it's something that we're we are not in their face, but we're saying, hey, we are a resource. We're here. You can chat with us at any time. The gym owner does have the option to turn that off though. So I want to make that clear because if they're like, yeah, I don't know your coaches or I'm not comfortable with that, or I have somebody on my staff that I want to do it and you just turn us off and then you can essentially chat with your clients. So again, we are trying to be agnostics. Like we want to be as helpful as possible, but you don't have to use us, right? If you're the expert, go for it. And we can kind of serve you in that regard too, but we have as much support as they need.
Absolutely. I can't recommend enough. So I've done this little chart into multiple people who have wanted to do their own in-house nutritional coaching, right? And where it's going to be people-based and you're generally paying out to that nutritional coach 50, 60+% of the revenue because you have to keep them fed or else you're going to lose those people.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fastest way for a coach who gets fat with clients in your gym. If they ever want to go and start their own thing, out the door that can go because their brand loyalty is to that nutritional coach, not to the gym brand in and of itself.
Right.
And I've shown the same number, like 20% adoption rate at these rates. Sure, hypothetically, you're charging $400 a month, Mr. Gym Owner, for this really in-person thing, but you are keeping maybe 20% of it, 15% of it, maybe after taxes. Whereas with Macrostax, sure, it might not be as attractive on paper with the final number. The amount of time, I mean, we're talking like, 40 hours a month on the other one, versus 4 hours, if that, a month with Macrostax. It's a no-brainer. Yeah. Like, let passive things be passive. Don't try to be passive active or like, oh, well, it's going to be passive because nutritional coaching. No, you had to hire 4 fucking people to do it. Hiring 4 people to do a thing is never fucking passive. It never will be. So I can't recommend enough for gym owners. And right now, you can go on for Macrostax teams, give it a run for 30 days, test run it. I mean, so for 30 days, is it just play in it and figure it out? Or they literally could have it for free for 30 days and start selling it?
Yeah, they can sell it. You can get as many people as you want onto the platform. They can be using the app, go for it. So it's just our goal is to give people enough time to implement it into their business the best way possible. And we do co-branding too. So it feels like an extension of their brand. They've got their logo on it. They can adjust the homepage of Macrostax, the actual app. So it has like all their content, their gym links, their blogs, their whatever. And so we're really trying to make it feel like an extension of their brand without the 40-hour investment and, the thousands of dollars that it costs to, get a nutrition coaching, and who knows if that person's going to stay or not. So, you're right. The margins are good and the number, the revenue is okay, but it's just the amount of work. It's just kind of like not set it and forget it because you do need to talk about it and it needs to be built into your program, but you're not actually having to do the labor that can be tedious for gym owners.
And then the last question I had is, do you guys provide, I guess it'd be kind of like go-to-market support or market, like, hey, I'm about to launch this. What are the best practices for getting this information and the content and the newsletter and getting that out to the members?
Yeah, 100%. So we have like a whole more content that you could ever know what to do with because we have an awesome in-house content team. So we've created all the before and afters, all the videos, TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, whatever you want, right? Or you can actually print out things if you're, old school and want to put a flyer. We have all the email templates built out and you can just put your name, whatever you can think of, it's in there. And I get really passionate about marketing, like I said, digital advertising background. So I love that aspect of it. And I want to help gym owners, figure out what works best with theirs. And it's not a one size fits all. So I love like learning, if somebody's only charging $80 a month, then it's probably $30 probably is steep for them. Right. So working with each individual gym is something we're passionate about. to find something that feels good for, for them. And there's obviously people who are on the flip side of that, where they're actually using Macrostax and charging $500 plus for just this nutrition add-on because they can, because their memberships are in the thousands, and it's because they have, all a million things, built in. And so we love talking to every customer that's willing to talk to us and take a call. And we do that onboarding, and it's free. And, we're going to look at your business model and say, here's what we think works best. They can take the advice or leave it. We're not going to force them into anything. Some people actually offer this for free. They eat the cost. They don't think, spending an extra $100 or $200 a month is nothing to be able to just offer this and have it. So there's those people too. So yeah, we love talking to the gyms and figuring out what works best. And I think that's something that will always be kind of a part of what's unique for us. It's not like you're not going to get to talk to us. We're still a small enough business, that we have people kind of emailing you almost every day saying like, let's get on the phone. Let's figure this out.
Awesome. Guys, I'm going to have the link for Macrostax Teams for that trial month down in the show notes. You can go ahead and access it there. It'll also be in the pre-roll that you listened to prior to this. But Lindsey, listen, this has been, I'm super glad we finally got a chance to do this. Congratulations on all the success. Anything that can be done to make gym owners more money without giving them a burden of a really heavy lift and additional certs and travel and HR and all the other stuff, I'm a huge fucking fan of. So thank you so much for putting the time and effort into this project. And I wish you nothing but continued success.
Yeah, thanks too. This was fun.
Awesome. Thank you. Boom. Cool. That was great. Thank you so much.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. That was awesome. I felt like, you're really good at what you do. So thanks for prompting all the questions. Sorry if that was exhausting for you, but
no, it was not. Listen, it's all good. And I can tell you're still fighting through whatever the hell whatever ick you got.
I know.
And it's dude, I don't know about you. My kid is, so every time it seems with that first quarter when she goes back to school, just the petri dish of all the bullshit from all the other kids is like always the thing that gets me. But yeah, Lindsey, thank you so much. I'm going to get this over to the team and have them rush this out the door. I'll let you know when it's going to drop, but it should be sooner than later.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You got it. Take care.
Okay, bye.